Liquidity is one of the most important aspects of trading, whether you trade SMC or supply and demand or ICT, any of the real ways of trading. Liquidity plays a huge part in trading, and essentially liquidity is an asset in the market that exists everywhere. Liquidity, as you can see in the screen, is the fuel of the market, right? And as I've just said, it exists everywhere. So liquidity is essentially above every high and every low in the market, okay? So typically some of the retail patterns that traders trade when they first start off is the idea of support and resistance, right? So what we have here is we have equal highs. If I just draw this, we have equal highs over here, and we have equal lows over here, right? So equal highs and equal lows, right? These are two of the most prominent liquidity types, right? Equal highs and equal lows, okay? So why do these form interest to us as traders, right? So equal highs and lows are essentially orders being stacked. Orders being stacked in the market, okay? So typically what we're going to see is price do something like this, right? We're going to see price make a range, sweep the equal highs, give us a structural break before then sweeping the equal lows, right? So we see a sweep of the equal highs followed by price trending down, taking out the equal lows, right? So this is an incredibly important part when it comes to liquidity, okay? Now, the second most prominent liquidity concept that people have probably heard of before is the idea of trend lines, right? So you can have a bullish trend line and you can have a bearish trend line, right? So we understand that there's liquidity below upwards sloping trend lines, right? And we know there's liquidity above every downwards sloping trend line, right? So again, where are we typically going to see this, right? So for those who follow my live streams, you understand that we have external versus internal range liquidity, right? So for example, if we do have price in a bullish market breaking structure, we could see equal highs like we discussed previously, and we could see this, right? So what we see is we see equal highs over here, or a trend line that gets swept by this move over here, and then we see price come down, creating a trend line again with liquidity just above. Ooh, let me use a dollar sign. Now typically what we're going to see here is we may see price tap into a POI, so this region over here, right? We may see price tap into a POI that breaks structure over here, right, before we see a fuel higher. So this fuel higher sweeps the trend line liquidity as it moves higher, right? So we're moving from liquidity pool to liquidity pool. Notice we have price create equal. Notice we see price create equal lows just over here, or a trend line liquidity, right? So we see price continuously moving from liquidity pool to liquidity pool. This is very important to understand as traders, okay? Now the final concept of liquidity, which should be considered, is simply structural highs and lows, right? So this here is a structural high. This one right here. If I get rid of the trend lines, this here is a structural high right here. Now above this is also liquidity. There's also liquidity here as well. Let me just... Above here is also liquidity, right? So we see price creating equal highs and lows, trend lines, and structural highs and lows, right? So these are the different liquidity pools in the market that we can use to trade, right? So why is liquidity important? Liquidity is the fuel of the market, right? Now in the ICT concepts and specifically in the ICT concepts, we're going to be going over Asian range liquidity and how liquidity can be used from different sessions and different timings to get involved. But that will be a video for a later date. So this here is obviously the liquidity video alone, and this should be studied first before we get involved, right? So liquidity exists. We have external and internal range liquidity. in the form of trend lines, equal highs and lows, and structural highs and lows, right? These are the most important parts of liquidity, and you need to get these under your belt before moving forward with the more advanced and in-depth ICT concepts.